Aphasia changed everything. Who can I become now? 6 years after stroke, learning to live, speak and find purpose with aphasia. August 25th, 2020 was the day my life split into a before and an after. Before that day, communication had always been one of my strengths. I spent much of my working life in communications, where words were not merely tools, but part of how I understood myself. I knew how to explain an idea, shape a message, persuade, connect, and hold a conversation. I trusted language. I trusted my own voice. Then I had a stroke. When I walked into the life that followed, I found myself living with aphasia, and one of my greatest strengths had suddenly become one of my deepest vulnerabilities. My thoughts were still there, my memories were still there, my emotions were still there. I still knew what I wanted to say, yet the path between thought and speech had somehow been disrupted. Words that once arrived without effort now hid from me. Sometimes I could see the word in my mind, but could not get it out. Sometimes another word came instead. Sometimes I began a sentence, knowing exactly where I wanted to go, only to find myself stranded halfway through it. What frightened me most was not simply that speaking had become difficult. It was that I could no longer trust what would happen when I opened my mouth. Would the right word come? Would the sentence make sense? Would the person listening understand what I meant, or only hear what I had failed to say? Words had once given me confidence, now they made me afraid. There were moments when I felt exposed and helpless, and moments when frustration turned inward. I felt foolish, even when somewhere inside I knew I was not. My intelligence had not disappeared, but when I could not express a simple thought, it was difficult not to question myself. There were days when silence seemed easier. Why struggle through a sentence while someone waited for me to finish? Why risk saying the wrong thing? Why put myself through the frustration of trying to make sense of everything inside my head for someone else? Perhaps it was safer simply not to speak. For a while, I think a part of me did retreat into that silence. I was grieving more than the ease of speech. I was grieving the person I remembered being. My independence, my confidence, my work, my physical abilities, and the version of myself who could enter a conversation without first wondering whether the words would come. In those early years, I thought recovery meant getting him back. It has taken me 6 years to begin understanding that recovery may not be about returning at all. In 2022, almost 2 years after my stroke, I began writing A Cry in the Dark. I did not begin because I had ambitions of becoming an author. I was trying to make sense of what had happened to me and to give shape to feelings I could not always express aloud. Writing gave me something conversation no longer gave me easily: time. On the page, nobody was waiting for me to finish. I could stop at a word, search for another, change my mind, return later, and begin again. A thought did not disappear simply because I had failed to say it quickly enough. I could hold on to it until I found the language that belonged to it. Slowly, writing became part of my rehabilitation. It gave me somewhere to place the anger, grief, confusion and fear I'd carried since a stroke. More importantly, it gave me another way to hear myself again. When my spoken voice felt unreliable, the written word allowed me to say, "This is what happened to me. This is what I feel. This is who I still am." That same year, I was invited to speak at the 14th World Stroke Congress in Singapore. The presentation was only 10 minutes long. Before my stroke, speaking for 10 minutes was something I would hardly have thought twice about. After my stroke, those 10 minutes took weeks to prepare. I wrote every sentence carefully. I rehearsed again and again. I worried about where I might stumble, whether the words would come. and what might happen if my mind and mouth suddenly stopped cooperating. When the day came, standing on that stage frightened me. I was painfully aware that I was no longer the speaker I remembered. I could hear the difference in my voice. I could feel the effort behind every sentence. Yet somewhere in those 10 minutes, something shifted. I was not speaking as I once had, but I was speaking. I had not recovered my old confidence, but I had found enough courage to stand there despite its absence. That mattered. After the Congress, there was no grand plan. I simply kept writing. One book became another, and then another. At first, I thought I was writing about stroke and aphasia. Over time, I realized I was also writing about identity, fear, relationships, grief, hope, self-worth, and the strange experience of inhabiting the life that was still mine but no longer felt familiar. The books became part of my recovery because they made me look more closely at myself. I began to recognize the anger beneath my frustration, the fear beneath my silence, and the grief beneath my impatience. I also began to notice smaller victories I might once have dismissed, finding the right word, completing a conversation, walking a little farther, finishing a page, making myself understood. There was no orderly progression through any of this. Acceptance did not arrive one morning and permanently replace grief. Healing did not move in a straight line. I could feel strong one day and vulnerable the next. A good conversation could restore my confidence. A difficult one could shake it again. I have come to understand that acceptance is not the same as liking what happened, and it certainly is not the same as giving up. There are things I would gladly have back. There are losses that remain losses. Acceptance, for me, is quieter than that. It is being able to look at this life and say, this happened to me, this has changed me, and this life can still have meaning. That also meant learning to treat myself differently. Before my stroke, I often measured myself through achievement, productivity, and results. After my stroke, those old measures became cruel. If I judged myself only against the person I'd once been, I would spend the rest of my life believing that I was less. So I began, slowly and imperfectly, to recognize effort as well as outcome. A sentence that takes 5 minutes to say may still be an achievement. A conversation completed despite fear can still be a victory. A day of rest is not necessarily a day wasted. Recovery has taught me that caring for myself sometimes means pushing harder, but sometimes it means knowing when to stop. The body needs rehabilitation, but the mind needs tenderness too. Over these 6 years, my writing has travelled with me through many different versions of myself. My latest book, Brokenness Becomes Beautiful, perhaps comes closest to capturing where I find myself today. It is not a declaration that I have healed, arrived, or somehow overcome everything. I have not. It reflects something I am only beginning to understand, that growth can exist alongside brokenness, and that strength does not always mean becoming whole again. Much of the book grew out of questions I have had to ask myself since my stroke, about identity, acceptance, self-worth, healing, care, and what it means to continue becoming when life changes in ways you never chose. These are not lessons I have completed, they are things I continue to live through. If I hope the book offers anything to someone going through a difficult season, it is not the promise that every wound will disappear. It is simply the possibility that our broken places do not have to be the end of our story. Meaning can still be found there. So can strength. So can hope. And sometimes perhaps even beauty. That is why the words of Deborah Meyerson and Steve Zuckerman meant so much to me when they reflected on Brokenness Becomes Beautiful. Thank you, Terence, for writing this book. You so beautifully capture the experience of millions of stroke survivors living with aphasia, frustration, opportunity, hope, beauty, and so much more. Such powerful impact by not letting aphasia silence your voice. Of everything they wrote, the words that remain with me are these: not letting aphasia silence your voice. Perhaps because, in many ways, that is what these 6 years have been about. More recently, technology opened another unexpected door. For the audiobook of Brokenness Becomes Beautiful, I used AI to recreate a recognisable version of my own voice. The significance of hearing that voice is difficult to explain to someone who has never lost trust in their own speech. For years, I'd lived with the same private frustration. I know what I want to say, but I cannot always say it. Then I heard my own words spoken back to me in something that sounded recognisably like me. It was deeply emotional. AI did not cure my aphasia. It did not restore the life I had before my stroke, and it cannot erase the realities of living with aphasia. But it gave me another way to communicate. Today, AI helps me organise my thoughts, prepare talks, write and shape ideas that might otherwise struggle to find their way out. When the distance between thinking and speaking feels too wide, technology can sometimes help me build a bridge across it. That experience has made me look beyond myself. Could technology help someone with aphasia communicate more independently? Could it support rehabilitation, rebuild confidence, strengthen relationships, or help someone return to work and participate more fully in society? I do not know all the answers, but I want to be part of asking those questions, because 6 years of living with aphasia have given me an understanding no textbook could have given me. I know what it is like to sit in a conversation with a complete thought inside your head and no easy way to release it. I know the frustration of watching someone mistake difficulty speaking for difficulty thinking. I know what it is like to lose confidence, depend on others, and wonder whether the world still has a place for the person you have become. And I also know that life has not ended. It may not be the life you once imagined, but another life can still take shape. That is where I find myself now. For much of the past 6 years, I've been trying to understand what happened to me and how to live with it. Now I find myself asking, what can I do with what I have lived through? I want to lend my lived experience to research and to conversations about how stroke rehabilitation, community support, and technology can be better shaped around the people who actually live with these challenges. I want to work alongside healthcare professionals, researchers, educators, technologists, and communities. I want my experience to contribute to better understanding, better rehabilitation, and more opportunities for people with aphasia to communicate, reconnect, participate, and find purpose. Most of all, I want people to understand one very simple truth. Difficulty speaking does not mean difficulty thinking. If you meet someone with aphasia, give them time. Do not rush to fill every silence, or assume that the pause means there is nothing to say. Speak naturally. Speak directly to the person in front of you. Behind that pause may be an entire story. There may be humour, anger, knowledge, love, memories, opinions, hopes and dreams, waiting for a way out. Sometimes we simply need more time to find the door. On August 25th, 2026, 6 years will have passed since my stroke. The date feels different to me this year. The first 25th of August was a turning point I did not choose. It divided my life without asking permission. This 25th of August feels like another turning point, but this time I have some say in where I go next. I do not know exactly what the next chapter will look like. Perhaps it will take me further into research, advocacy, technology, or community work. Perhaps it will lead somewhere I cannot yet imagine. What I do know is that I want these 6 years to mean something beyond my own recovery. My books have been part of that journey because writing gave me somewhere to put my voice when speaking felt impossible. Through writing, I began to discover who remained after so much of what I had known about myself had changed. I am still learning to accept that person. I am still learning how to care for him, how to be kinder to him, and how to allow him to grow. None of this is finished. There are days when I feel empowered and days when I feel vulnerable again. I revisit grief, I rediscover courage, I lose confidence and rebuild it. I move forward, circle back and begin again. Perhaps that is simply part of being human. 6 years ago, I was desperately trying to become the person I had been before my stroke. Today, I am less interested in going backwards. I find myself asking a different question. Who can I become now? I do not yet know the full answer, but I know this much. My voice is different, my way of communicating is different, my life is different. Yet I am still here, with thoughts, memories, emotions, and stories that are mine to tell. And perhaps the most meaningful thing I can do with the voice I have found is to use it so that other people living with aphasia are given the space, dignity, and opportunity to find theirs too. Aphasia changed my voice. It did not silence me. Terence Ang, stroke survivor, author, aphasia advocate, Singapore.